The repair shop wasn't where you'd expect something like this. It smelled of oil and old rubber, the kind of air that lingers even when the doors stay open. I was just another pair of hands behind the counter, half hidden under the hum of fluorescent lights. Most people came in, dropped their keys, muttered complaints about squeaks and rattles, and left without looking at me twice. But she wasn't most people. She walked in with an ease that didn't match the place, like she knew how to own a room without trying. Not loud, not dressed to impress, just a quiet confidence, the kind that made everyone else look smaller without her meaning to. Mid-40s, hair pinned back with a few strands falling loose, blazer still sharp from work, shoes clicking against the concrete floor. I pretended to focus on the paperwork, pen hovering a second too long. She cleared her throat. "You're staring." I blinked, caught, muttered something about needing her license plate number. My face warmed faster than the coffee cooling in its styrofoam cup. That should have been it. A routine transaction, another forgettable customer. But there was something in the way she paused before handing me her keys, eyes flicking toward me like she was measuring whether I'd look away first. I didn't. I couldn't. And that's when she smirked, barely, just the corner of her mouth tugging upward, as if she'd caught me in a game I hadn't realized I was playing. "Stop thinking about me," she said, voice low but steady. Maybe I should have laughed or shrugged it off. Instead, the reply broke free without permission. "Only if you stop being unforgettable." The silence after was heavy enough to make the ticking clock on the wall feel loud. I knew I'd overstepped. She knew it too. But she didn't pull back her keys, didn't walk out, didn't do what anyone else would have done. Instead, she leaned slightly against the counter, eyes narrowing just a fraction. "You're too young to mean that." Her words were sharp, but the way her fingers tapped once against the metal keyring betrayed a hesitation. "I mean it anyway," I said, softer this time. And then, nothing. Just the two of us suspended there, my pulse thudding in my ears, her gaze holding mine longer than it should have. She broke it first, sliding the keys across the counter with a practiced ease, like the moment hadn't happened. Business returned. Paperwork signed. Instructions exchanged. Everything neat, controlled, professional. But that crack, those few seconds of raw pause, had already sunk its teeth into me. I told myself I'd forget it, like I always do with fleeting encounters. But later, when I wiped my hands on a rag and leaned against the workbench, her words replayed in my head. "Stop thinking about me." And my reply, reckless, unfiltered, kept echoing louder. "Only if you stop being unforgettable." I knew then it was too late. The second time wasn't an accident. She came back a week later, same blazer, different scarf, a faint shadow under her eyes that hadn't been there before. I told myself she was just here for the car, that the last time meant nothing. But the second I saw her, my chest tightened in a way that didn't feel like coincidence. The shop was quieter that afternoon. The other guys were in the back, music low, tools clinking. I was at the counter when she stepped in, phone in hand, brow furrowed. She didn't notice me at first. Her thumb scrolled fast, her lips pressed thin, like whatever she was reading wasn't good. When her eyes finally lifted, she covered it quickly. Too quickly. "I hope you're better at fixing cars than you are at small talk." Her voice carried that same guarded humor, a line drawn with precision. I smiled, trying not to look as if I'd been studying the tiny crease between her brows. "Depends. The car or the small talk? What needs more work?" That got the smallest laugh out of her. Short, clipped, but real. She placed her phone face down on the counter. Her hand lingered on it a second too long. That's when I noticed the fine tremor in her fingers before she pulled them back. "You don't have to wait in here," I said gently. "It'll be a bit." She hesitated, then shook her head. "I'd rather stay." She sat in the corner chair, crossing her legs, trying to look composed. But every so often her eyes drifted toward the muted TV on the wall, not watching, not really seeing. When I walked past with a stack of receipts, I caught the faintest sigh slip from her, like she hadn't meant for anyone to hear. I shouldn't have cared, but I did. And then there were the little things, the way her laugh, when it finally came, was lower than most, soft but edged with exhaustion. The way her hands, resting on her lap, kept brushing the seam of her skirt as though needing something to do. The way her shoulders didn't quite relax, even in stillness. She was all control on the surface, but beneath it, she looked tired. Not just today tired. Worn. Everything all right? I asked finally, too quietly for anyone else to hear. Her eyes met mine, sharp at first. Then something shifted, a flicker of hesitation. Vulnerability. She looked away before answering. Long week. That's all. But the pause before, that's all, told me more than she wanted me to know. I wanted to ask more, but I didn't. Instead, I went back to pretending to check the paperwork, though every nerve in me was still tuned to her presence. When her car was ready, I handed her the keys. Our fingers brushed, accidentally maybe, but she didn't pull away immediately. For the briefest moment, her grip lingered, as if she'd forgotten whose hand she was holding. And then it was gone. She took the keys, gave me a nod that was too brisk, too professional. But when she turned toward the door, she hesitated, just half a second. Long enough to make me wonder if she wanted to say something more. I stood there, pulse unsteady, replaying that pause. Because sometimes, it isn't the words that echo. It's the silence they leave behind. It was late when she came back, later than anyone ever did. The rain had been steady all evening, sheets of water streaking the shop windows, pooling outside in the glow of the streetlights. Everyone else had gone home. I stayed behind to finish paperwork, though truthfully, I just didn't feel like going back to my apartment yet. The bell over the door startled me. She walked in, rain clinging to her coat, hair damp around her face. For a moment, she just stood there, shaking the water from her scarf like she wasn't sure she should have come inside. Car trouble again? I asked, half joking. She shook her head, a small laugh escaping. No, just passing by. Saw the light on. That wasn't the kind of thing people usually said. I motioned toward the back, where the small break room held a coffee pot that hadn't been cleaned in weeks. Not much here, but burnt coffee. She smiled, tired, soft, and followed me anyway. We ended up sitting across from each other at the tiny table, both with chipped mugs in hand. The storm outside was louder than our words at first. I found myself watching the way she cupped her mug with both hands, holding it like it might steady her. You shouldn't be here this late, she said eventually, though her tone wasn't scolding. Neither should you, I replied. That earned me a look, direct, unflinching. For a moment, I thought she was about to say something that would change everything. Her lips parted, then pressed closed again. Instead she asked, How old are you really? 24. She exhaled, leaning back in her chair. You're just a kid. Does it feel like that? I asked quietly, her hand stilled on the rim of her mug. She didn't answer. The silence between us stretched long, broken only by the patter of rain against the window. Something in the air shifted, heavier, closer. My chest ached with the urge to close the space between us, to bridge it with words, or with something else. But before either of us moved, her phone buzzed on the table. She glanced at the screen, and I saw the name before she flipped it over. Daniel. Her jaw tightened. She didn't pick it up, just stared at the darkened screen, one finger tapping absently against the edge. Friend? I asked, though the question felt hollow. She gave a humorless smile. Something like that. Her voice was softer then, threaded with something I couldn't name. Resentment, maybe. Or regret. I wanted to ask more. Instead, I sat there, nails pressing into my palms under the table, trying to keep from reaching across to touch her hand. The storm rattled the windows. She looked at me once more, eyes shining in the dim light, and for a heartbeat the world seemed to shrink to that moment. If I leaned forward, if she leaned just slightly closer, something irreversible would happen. But she stood instead, sliding her phone into her coat pocket. I should go. I nodded, though the words stuck in my throat. And when the door shut behind her, I was left staring at the rain, wondering how close almost could feel to unbearable. The shop was nearly empty again when it happened. A quiet Tuesday, the kind where time dragged and the air smelled faintly of rain-soaked pavement. She hadn't meant to stay, at least, that's what she said when she came by just to check on something with the brakes. But somehow the hours slipped past. Now it was just the two of us, the fluorescent lights buzzing overhead, her coat draped over the back of a chair like she'd forgotten it there. She sat at the counter, fingers idly tracing the edge of a receipt, not looking at me. I leaned against the doorway, trying not to notice the ache in my chest from the silence we kept falling into. Finally, she broke it. "What are we doing?" The words came out flat, almost accidental, like she hadn't meant to let them escape. But they hung there, heavier than anything either of us had said before. I opened my mouth, closed it. My throat felt dry. "Talking," I said weakly. Her eyes flicked up, sharp, unamused. "Don't play dumb." I shifted against the doorframe, heat crawling up my neck. "Then tell me what you think we're doing." She shook her head, a bitter laugh slipping out. "That's the problem. I don't know." The room was too quiet after that. The hum of the lights, the occasional creak of pipes in the walls, all of it seemed louder than our breathing. She rubbed her temple like the thought of explaining herself was exhausting. "You're young," she said finally, voice low. "And I'm not. Whatever this is," she gestured vaguely between us. "It doesn't make sense." I pushed off the wall, stepping closer before I realized it. Maybe it doesn't have to. Her gaze held mine, unblinking, steady. "Don't," she whispered. Not sharp, not commanding, pleading. I stopped a few feet away. The space between us felt electric, charged, unbearable. She swallowed, eyes shining in the harsh light. "You think this is some connection, some story, but it's not. It's just me, too tired, too distracted, maybe even a little lonely. That's all." The words were supposed to sound dismissive, but her voice cracked halfway through. Just slightly, but enough. I didn't move. Couldn't. The silence stretched again, long enough that I thought she might leave it there, might gather her things and walk out. Instead, she leaned forward, elbows on the counter, face half hidden in her hands. "I can't remember the last time someone looked at me the way you do." My chest tightened. I wanted to answer, to tell her she didn't see herself the way I did, that she carried more presence in the curve of her mouth, the weight of her stare, than anyone half her age. But the words stuck, too big for my throat. So I stayed silent. And she sat there, eyes lowered, breathing unsteady. Finally, she lifted her gaze again and whispered, so soft I almost missed it, "Don't make me want something I can't have." The line cut through me sharper than any goodbye could have. She didn't mean to show me. I know that because the moment it happened, her whole body stiffened like she wanted to rewind time. It was a Thursday evening, the shop almost closed, golden lights spilling through the wide windows. She sat at the counter again, coat folded neatly, phone resting by her elbow. I was pretending to check the day's invoices when the sound broke the silence, a faint ding. She reached for her phone too fast, but I'd already seen the preview flash across the screen. Just a single word in the notification bar, anniversary. Her face gave her away before she could hide it. A flicker of pain, sharp, raw, unguarded. She tapped the screen, then locked it again, laying the phone face down like it burned to touch. I didn't ask. I should have let it go. But the quiet between us was heavy, and my voice came before I thought better of it. "Someone important?" Her eyes snapped up to mine. For a second, I thought she might snap, tell me to mind my business, remind me of all the walls between us. Instead, she looked down again, fingers fidgeting with the phone. "My husband," she said softly. I froze. She exhaled, rubbing at her temple. "Ex-husband. I should say that. 3 years now." The word husband echoed longer than it should have. I didn't move, didn't breathe. She laughed, quiet, humorless. "You remind me of him, sometimes. Not the way he ended, but the way he started. Young, curious, too much fire for his own good." I didn't know what to say. My throat felt tight, as though anything I said would be too much or not enough. She glanced up at me then, catching me in the act of staring, of not knowing how to step out of the silence she'd dropped between us. "Don't look at me like that," she whispered, "like I'm broken glass." "I'm not," I said quickly. Too quickly. Her eyes softened, but her posture stayed stiff. "I loved him, and then I lost him long before he left. I can't." Her voice trailed off, the words catching like splinters. The storm inside her was so close to the surface I could feel it in my chest. I wanted to reach across the counter, wanted to say something that would make it lighter. Instead, I forced myself to stay still, to let her keep control. After a long silence, She straightened, pushing her phone into her bag like she was burying the moment. But before she did, I caught a glimpse of the photo on her lock screen. Her and a man, smiling. Her hand on his shoulder, his head tilted just enough toward her to say he adored her. I thought she'd shut it all down right there. Pretend it never happened. But instead, she looked at me one last time, tired and bare, and whispered, "You don't know what it's like to carry a ghost." And that line stayed lodged in me, heavy and unmovable, long after she left. It wasn't supposed to happen that night. The shop was already dark, the keys all hung neatly on their hooks, the world outside slipping into winter quiet. She'd stopped by again. No reason, not really. Said she was just passing through. I didn't call her on it. Maybe because I didn't want to know the truth, or maybe because I already did. We sat in the break room, the kind of silence that wasn't heavy anymore but tender, like both of us had stopped pretending there wasn't something there. Her coat was draped over the chair beside her. Her hair had loosened from its pins. For the first time, she didn't look composed. She looked human, tired, and somehow more beautiful because of it. She rested her elbow on the table, chin on her hand, and stared at the scratched surface like it held answers. "You know this can't go anywhere," she said finally. No edge, no command, just the plain truth of it. I nodded. "I know." Her eyes flicked up. "Then why are we here?" I hesitated. The words felt too fragile for the air. Because even if it doesn't make sense, it feels real. Something shifted in her expression. Not surrender, not agreement, just the soft acknowledgement that I wasn't wrong. We let it sit there, unsolved, unpolished. The hum of the old refrigerator filled the silence. My heartbeat felt louder than the storm outside. At one point, her hand slid across the table to rest near mine. Not touching, just close enough that the warmth of her skin reached me. I stared at that space, so small, but it felt like a cliff edge. Slowly, carefully, I turned my hand palm up. An invitation. Nothing more. Her fingers hesitated above mine. And then, with a breath so quiet I almost didn't hear it, she let them fall. Our hands fit awkwardly, imperfectly, but it was the kind of imperfection that felt earned. We didn't look at each other. We didn't need to. The world didn't tilt or explode. It simply settled, like both of us had been holding something too heavy, and in that moment, we'd set it down between us. After a while, she leaned back, our hands still linked, her shoulders dropping in the smallest exhale of relief. She turned her head, met my gaze finally, and whispered, barely audible, "Don't ask me for promises." "I won't," I said, and that was enough. We sat there until the clock ticked past midnight, hands joined, no words left to fill the space. The storm outside had eased, but neither of us moved. When she finally stood to leave, her fingers slipped from mine reluctantly, like neither of us wanted to admit the parting. At the door, she glanced back, just once. A look that carried everything unspoken, everything we'd refused to name. And then she was gone, leaving only the faint trace of her warmth in my hand. Quiet. Final. Inevitable. It's been months since that night. Months since the shop, the rain, the quiet collapse that neither of us named aloud, but both of us carried. I don't go back and replay it obsessively. Not exactly. But I do remember the weight of her hand in mine, the warmth that settled there, like a small truce with the world. We're still figuring things out. Still navigating the weird space between desire and life, between what we want and what we can give. She's softer around me now. Not careless, never that, but less guarded. I can see the cracks in her armor, little glimpses of the woman she's always been underneath, the responsibilities, the past heartbreak, the careful distance. And I've changed too. The reckless longing I carried before has tempered into patience. Watching her, listening, knowing when to speak and when to stay silent, those small lessons have shifted something inside me. I don't try to fix her. I just try to be present, as human and flawed as I am. And somehow that's enough. Love, I've learned, isn't always a declaration or a grand gesture. Sometimes it's standing in a kitchen together, hands almost brushing across the counter, and saying nothing at all. Sometimes it's waiting for the other person to speak first, for the storm inside them to settle. We still have moments of misalignment. Still, she teases me, tests me, and I catch myself staring too long, wondering if she notices. And she does, but now we laugh about it, quietly, privately. It's not dramatic. It's not cinematic. It's real. There's a rhythm to us now, fragile but undeniable. She leans on me when the world presses too hard. I offer what small comfort I can, and neither of us pretends to have all the answers. We just show up. That's what makes it love, I think. Not perfection, not fireworks, but persistence and care. Sometimes I still catch myself thinking about that first time she came back to the shop, her guarded eyes hiding everything, her hand brushing mine by accident. Or maybe it wasn't an accident at all. And I smile, because I realize that everything that followed, the tension, the near misses, the silences, the confessions, was worth it for the moments like this. Quiet, comfortable, honest. She's still my mystery, still someone I can't fully read, and I don't want to. The not knowing, the slow discovery, that's part of the beauty. And maybe that's the lesson we both carry. Love doesn't have to be complete to be enough. Imperfect, complicated, hesitant, it can still be everything. I look at her across the table now, her fingers wrapped around her coffee mug, hair loose over one shoulder, and I know it's real. Not a story, not a fantasy, just us. And if you're still here, watching, wondering if love can be quiet and messy and patient, I can tell you it can. You just have to let it unfold, without forcing it, without demanding perfection. Because sometimes the most unforgettable moments are the ones that happen slowly, in silence, when no one else is watching.